Welcome to Deep River Farm, folks. It's early morning, 4:30 in the morning now. We got partly cloudy skies. The temperature here, 57 degrees. What's that tell you, folks? It's going to be cold in the mountains coming shortly. There's probably in the mid-40s in the higher elevations. Folks, when are you going to get your private bridge or private road repaired? Good question, ain't it? Don't look for it anytime soon, if at all. Welcome to Deep River Farm, folks. I know a lot of you's been looking forward to this video, and since last night, since we told that we're gonna stir the pot, it's gonna get stirred and it's gonna make some people mad, but we want to let people know what's going on. We're gonna talk about private bridge repairs since Hurricane Helene. Since Hurricane Helene, there was 8,000 private roads and bridges in western North Carolina that were in need of repairs. This includes various types of private bridges, but specific details on the number of the NCDOT built private bridges and are not provided in the available data. So we're going to take you back a little bit, give you a little bit of history here on what we're talking about, and then we're going to light the fire. So it starts out like this. We got a bridge in 3 hours. Unusual material allows the NCDOT to build fast after Helene, and the remnants of Hurricane Helene turned Ivy Creek north of Asheville into a torrent that carried away the Hobson Branch Road Bridge, along with all the trees and 2 houses nearby. The new bridge that took its place a little more than 4 months later looks much the same, except with shiny new guardrails and fresh black asphalt. As you drive over it, there's nothing to suggest that the bridge is actually made of 2 old railroad flat cars. So as it worked to replace the bridges destroyed by Helene, the NCDOT has relied on these unusual building materials and a Tennessee company that has them in abundance. Innovative Bridge Company, based in Nashville, has installed 40 bridges made with railroad cars for the NCDOT since Helene. Each car is 90 feet long, 9 feet wide. Once the supports are in place at either end, a single span flat car like the one at Hobson Branch Road takes no time to install. The NCDOT State Bridge Construction Engineer, they put 2 of them together, welded right down the middle, welded a guardrail to it, and we got a bridge in 3 hours. The Hobson Branch Road Bridge over Ivy Creek in northern Buncombe County, made from 2 railroad flat cars welded together side by side. And flooding from Helene damaged more than 800 North Carolina bridges in western North Carolina, nearly 150 beyond repair and will need to be replaced at an estimated cost of more than $200 million. NCDOT has used flat cars where bridges were washed away completely. It considers them temporary, but they're sturdy enough to handle any traffic for months or years. It will take to build a permanent replacement to go in its place. Not only are they quick to put in, but the rail car bridges are relatively inexpensive. A single span bridge can cost anywhere from $90,000 to $279,000, depending on the grading, the substructure, and other prep work. That's roughly half the cost of traditional temporary bridges. The first post-Helene flat car bridge was installed in Asheville. The Swannanoa River wiped out the Hardesty Lane Bridge, cutting off access to a storm debris processing yard, and city officials quickly began calling around about a fast temporary replacement. They got quotes from all over the place, and they were like crazy high, and they were a month out. And Lee Roberts, owner of Innovative Bridge Company, I told him I'd be there in 2 days, and they said, there's no way. And I said, I'll be there in 2 days and have you a bridge installed. It actually took 5 days from the initial conversation, but the bridge was in place on October the 15th. Someone from the DOT was there to watch, and soon the department was placing orders. Now, ain't that something, folks? The NCDOT was so impressed with Innovative Bridge, they began placing orders for bridges. Now, the temporary bridge over the Swannanoa River in Asheville, made of the old flat cars, the City of Asheville Company helps build about 200 bridges a year. Innovative Bridge didn't invent the railroad flat car bridge. The company's website includes studies from Canada and the Midwest demonstrating the concept back in the 1990s. The company got started a decade ago installing them for farmers in Mississippi. A viral Facebook post brought in more business from cities and clubs looking for pedestrian bridges in parks, golf courses, walking trails, utilities that needed access to their equipment, and from the street and highway departments, orders began to come in. Robert says Innovative Bridge now does about 200 bridges a year and has developed relationships with railroads looking to offload their flat cars and have reached the end of their lives. And Innovative Bridge has a contractor that removes the wheels, the brakes, the trucks, the couplers, and the air tanks from each car, which are shipped by truck to where they're needed. About all that's left to indicate that the steel structures were once a freight rail car are the paint and markings on the side. The old railroad car markings are visible on the side of the new Hobson Branch Road Bridge over Ivy Creek in Buncombe County, North Carolina. The temporary bridge opened on February the 7th, replacing that one that was washed out by the remnants of Helene in September. Roberts said the company's bridges have always been a single rail car long. That changed when the DOT began building piers and stringing them end to end. 2 temporary bridges connecting Yancey and Mitchell counties are 3 rail cars long, stretching 270 feet across the North Toe River. We've gone into territories we've never been into before, Roberts said. The DOT did the engineering and we made it happen. Now, folks, we're gonna look at this right quick, and we're gonna try to figure out these folks in Western North Carolina are hearing this right now, and you're thinking, man, the DOT's putting orders in, all these cities, municipalities, and farmers, and all these people are putting these cars, flat rail cars in, and they're inexpensive, anywhere from $90,000 to $279,000, depending on the span. They're considered temporary, but can last for years. And I just need one for my driveway. I just need one to go over the branch to be able to get my cars out, so I can go to work, so I don't have to tote groceries over the river. I don't have to use that cable across the river tied to a pulley and a cart to get my groceries and my propane and my gas and all that stuff over the river. I need something like this that I can have put in 2 or 3 days, and they cheap. Well, folks, get ready. I'm getting ready to stir up the pot. All right, folks, the Helene Recovery Bill number 47. We're gonna read this right quick so you got an understanding about what we're getting ready to say. The number 47 bill, $100 million to the Department of Public Safety. Division of Emergency Management for the Private Road and Bridge Repair and Replacement Program in accordance with 2.3 of this Act. So let's read Section 2.3. It would establish the Private Road and Bridge Repair and Replacement Program within the Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, to disperse grants for the repair and replacement of private roads and bridges damaged or destroyed by Hurricane Helene. North Carolina Emergency Management would be directed to work with the Department of Transportation to administer the program and would develop criteria to prioritize the repair and replacement of private roads and bridges consistent with this section. So right there, folks, they're going to be directed to work with the DOT to administer the program and would develop a criteria. Now, all you need is a bridge that can support the weight of a fire truck, okay? A tanker truck with 5,000 gallons of water on it will weigh a maximum of 80,000 pounds. These rail cars are beyond that, way beyond that. So there's no reason for people to worry about, can it go over it? Brother Bud said when they put Tim's bridge in, there was 2 concrete trucks full of concrete sitting on the bridge at the same time. Now, I imagine 2 concrete trucks are going to outweigh a fire truck with 5,000 gallons of water on it any day of the week. So, let's continue on reading here. The North Carolina Emergency Management would be directed to take all reasonable steps to obtain federal assistance or alternative funds prior to obligating state funds for the program if such federal assistance or alternative funds are available, and would be directed not to duplicate repair efforts. Folks, did you hear what I just read? To take all reasonable steps to obtain federal assistance. Now, this bill, number 47, has been passed quite some time. Yet they're slow walking putting any bridges in because they're waiting to see if federal assistance or alternative funds become available before obligating the state funds. So get this too now. We talking $90,000 to $279,000 a bridge. A lot of you folks are not spanning the entire river. Some of you are. A lot of you's just spanning a small branch or a creek that, blew your old culvert out, and you needing something to span it that's reasonably and cheap, and it won't interfere with navigable waters and that type of thing. So the Helene Recovery Bill's only allocated $100 million to this project. Now, folks, here's where it gets real bad. The North Carolina Department of Transportation is wanting control over every private bridge that goes in. Every one of them. With that, they are escalating the prices, having to put all this engineering into it and all this garbage. They got to do environmental studies. They got to get the Wildlife Resource Commission involved to see if there's any endangered salamanders or any endangered bats in the area. If they find any, they've got to figure out when the mating season is, and they'll create moratoriums and all this stuff so that the bats and things won't be interfered with. So, you're already waiting here for to obtain federal assistance. So they're slow walking that. We're 11 months after Helene. You know how many bridges they put in? Private roads and bridges? 3. Now, Brother Bud went up and found out about Tim. Many of you in Avery County have seen that. Y'all went all to pieces because y'all were told you was number 80 out of 1,000 or something in line for a bridge. Okay? Now, in one phone call, they found out and said it might take 2 weeks to put a bridge in. Well, let me tell you something, folks. It takes 2 weeks to get the equipment in place if the state's involved in their engineering and all their garbage. Then they got to do all their studies. Then they got to get their hydraulic person involved. They got to get their environmental people involved. They all got to write reports. They all got to have meetings. They all got to talk about it. Then they got to do studies on endangered species. Then they got to have more meetings to talk about that, make sure that all goes. Then they got to have meetings to figure out if the utilities are going to be involved. Now we're 6 months in before we even start construction on the bridge. Then they got to bring a crew in and clean the river out to get the debris out of the way before they can ever start doing anything on the bridge. So that 2 weeks they was talking about is now turned into about 8 months before that bridge has anything to do with it. And then with all the cost of all the studies and all the engineering and all this stuff, you've just run the bridge price up, folks. You're looking at $500,000 for a bridge that the DOT is wanting to put in. That's a far cry from $90,000 to $279,000. You're talking about half price. You're talking about a fifth of the price for a bridge that goes over a creek or a stream. Now, here's something people ain't thought about. If every one of these bridges are going to run an average of $400,000 to $500,000 or more apiece, look, folks, they only allocated $100 million to the project. What's that tell you, folks? If they $500,000 apiece, and they only done $100 million to start with, how many of you is going to get a bridge? What's the prioritization of it? Who's going to be priority to receive one of these bridges? Is it going to be a county that has a lot of children? Or is it going to be some people that are disabled and elderly? Who gets to be in the front of the line to receive this bridge? This astronomically cost of a bridge. When Innovative Bridge Company can come in and have you a bridge in about 10 or 12 days. And then the whole thing in a nutshell is, my belief is, they only want certain bridge companies to do the work. Is there kickbacks involved? Who knows? It's a far cry from a $90,000 bridge, or even less if it's a whole lot less of a span. Say you only need 30 or 40 feet. You might get a bridge in for $50,000 or 60. And most people are sort of like that. They don't span the river. Now, the next thing on this whole thing in a nutshell, folks, is the DOT wants to take control of all these bridges. Does that mean that they can control both sides of the river? Have you just lost your access to your land? If they slow walk this thing long enough and they don't have the money to build, or is this a way to rush people into selling their land or just vacating it altogether so that down the road these big investment companies can come in and build these multi-million-dollar homes that's going to be paying property taxes, state taxes, things like that? Is that the big picture? I'm going to show you a picture right now of the statement that our former governor said, and you're just going to just read the caption above it. That's what he said in New York. Now, folks, let me tell you something else that they're trying to do. You remember when we talked about the new flood zone planning? Here's what they're doing now. They're trying to keep people from getting a bridge right here. Let me read you sort of what went on in a meeting. They said that because Mr. Tim Buchanan is now in a floodplain, we were supposed to get a floodplain development permit and a building permit, and also submit engineering plans that showed that the bridge can withstand the weight. The argument was that a fully loaded tanker of a fire truck is too heavy for the bridge, and the chief was concerned. When asked if they could get a report or concern from the chief, they said they are speaking for the chief. So in other words, they had nothing. So you're fighting against red tape. Now I thought, Mr. Trump, I hope this thing gets to you. I thought you said they was going to cut the red tape so these people could get back to a normal life. Now, how can we put bridges in if we've got all this bureaucracy involved? These spans are not interfering with navigable waters. All they're needing is to put the supports on the outside of the banks of the creek and give these people back the access to their homes. These people are tax-paying citizens. These people are paying county and state and federal taxes. They have a right to have access to their homes. They have a right for emergency services to have access if needed. That's what they pay taxes for. And right now, they are being taxed without representation and being railroaded, red tape, bureaucratic garbage to keep people from being able to have their life, have it back, and with only $100 million, and it's going to take $500,000 to do a bridge. You know, it don't take a rocket science to do that math. There's going to be a bunch of people ain't going to have a bridge. There's bridges all over western North Carolina that use that same type of bridge, and they've been there since the 50s. Wooden, slatted bridges with no guardrails. I got a video in one of my libraries. You can watch it. It's on Johns River. Look at some of them bridges. Single lane, just like a flat rail car, but they're built out of wood. They've been there for years and years and years. This was a 1,000-year flood. And now they're wanting to use the floodplain as a way to keep people from getting permits. And then they're wanting to use all this garbage. The state wants control of everything. They're gonna take control of all the water, all the bridges, and everything else. They got no business doing that. The red tape needs to be cut and let these people get a bridge in and a reasonable amount of money. Now, Mr. Tim Buchanan's bridge was paid for by Samaritan's Purse. So, folks, in another meeting that took place, we give you a little bit of the details about the chief being concerned with the weight of the bridges, and then come to find out they were speaking for the chief, and the chief wasn't really involved, so they had nothing. Now, here's another big problem. If it's privately paid for, like through Samaritan's Purse, then the requirements are based on the county regulations, which are typically relaxed or less than the state. In our case, this was privately paid, so we should not have to follow state regulations. I asked her for the county requirements, and she said she'd have to send me the stats. I have attached below what was sent, which does not show what the county requires for any bridge weights. Now, I know why the state wants to have all the bridges, and that's so they can force everyone into state regulations on the bridges. Even if this is a private bridge to a residence. The whole thing in a nutshell is this. They are overinflating estimates and want all the bridges so they can show at congressional hearings that they are doing all this work to get more money, when they only have 2 contracts in Barnardsville and 3 bridges completed from the state through Innovative Bridge Company. According to the owner of Innovative Bridge Company, the DOT also does not have enough contractors to do all the bridges. That will be a very, very slow process. The bridge company can do 12 to 15 bridges per week when paid for by the nonprofits. They are also classifying all bridges, whether to a resident or not, as bridges and not driveways. This is to obtain more permitting and slow walk it and create more bureaucratic red tape. And said it's always been that way when the state is involved. The owner of Innovative Bridge also said he has the engineering plans and will submit them and the drawings. So there you go. With the state involved, not having enough personnel, overinflating cost to get more money, and more money means more opportunities for kickbacks and things like that. That's what you're seeing. So there it is in a nutshell. Your typical red tape bureaucratic process to obtain more money, more tax money, when it's sitting there in Raleigh in the rainy day fund, and only by overinflating all this and creating cost, making cost, and only preferred bridge contractors approved means way higher cost and less bridges for those needing them. So with $100 million set aside, only 200 of you is going to get a bridge, and there's at least 6,000 of you needing private bridges. And you've already lost, a lot of you lost your land, the soil's gone. Some of you lost your home, and you need to get a camper or something over on your property. You can't get a camper over there. You can't get a tiny home over there. You can't rebuild. You can't get building materials over to rebuild. The insurance took your money and run. You're paying county taxes on structures that if they're still there, and homeowners insurance on structures that are over there with no bridge. You're paying fire taxes on your vehicles, your home, your land, and all this with no access with a fire truck to get there. So look at all this, folks. They're trying to run you out of Dodge, run you out of the hills by legislation, regulations, and permitting, and then the control over both sides of the waterway with the DOT bridge. It's going to force people to have to get out because they're paying mortgages and things on property they have no access to. Well, that just paves the way for investors to come in, swoop up this prime land along the rivers and the creeks, the scenic views, for big money development so that the rich can get richer by stealing from the middle class people. Have a blessed day. And here's another problem. Once these bridges are designed and put in place, if Samaritan's Purse is helping with the cost of the bridges, through a grant that they got from USAID, they only have 2 site engineers that can go around to verify that the bridge engineering is complete and correct. So you've got another delay right there with not enough help in certifying these bridges as worthy. So folks, keep in mind there was only $100 million allocated from the state, and they want to sit around on their hands and wait and see if there's any federal money coming. Meanwhile, you're walking across the river, falling over the rocks, running across your footbridge, having to rebuild it every time the river gets up because, you know, you're having to build it in sections with posts in the water, and they, you know, debris comes down the river and washes your footbridge away. Or you're having to ride a zip line across the river to get from point A to point B over there with your cart and stuff, hauling your gas and your propane tanks and your groceries and stuff. Meanwhile, your car's set on the other side over there. They ain't been moved in 11 months and rusting down. And then you're going to have problems with stuff dry rotting and your brakes seized up and all this stuff. And meanwhile, they're wanting to escalate the price of your bridges to $500,000. So you're only going to get 2 out of every million, folks. So, you know, out of 100 million, what you going to get? 200 bridges? And there was how many damaged and lost? Let's just say they 6,000 of you left. What the rest of you going to do for a bridge? You know, the way they got this thing set up and slow walking it, slow balling it, and just messing around, waiting on to see if they're going to get any money from the federal government so they don't have to use the state funds. You know, a lot of you would die before you ever got a bridge. Think about that, folks. Somebody needs to go over to Raleigh and kick them right in the hind end and get them to moving. All they're doing is they've got a company right here that can put a bridge in 2 weeks. A real bridge. You know, you don't have to have something that's going to have a double lane traffic across there. You just need something that's going to hold 80,000 pounds. And these flat rail cars do just that. But oh no, we got an idea. They just want certain bridge contractors involved. Show me the money. Maybe that's what it is. Kickbacks, exorbitant, exasperated cost. You know, what's the deal here? We need President Trump to step in and kick somebody's hind end in Raleigh and tell them to get on with this program so these people can get back to living. They've been through enough. Wildfires, flooding, and everything else. While they still sit on their hands waiting on federal funds to come in because they don't want to use what's here. You know, if people wasn't so skeptical of government, they would help pay for these bridges. A lot of people would donate money for these bridges for these individuals. But nobody trusts the government because there's too much power-hungry control freaks getting paid under the table in the state capitals and in Washington, D.C. They're too worried about, you know what the Bible says, it's going to be very hard for a rich man to ever get into heaven. And the money is the root of all evil. I think that sums it up in a nutshell right there, folks. And that's what I think is going on. Thank you for watching this evening, folks. I hope everybody has a blessed day. I hope you didn't have to start out the broadcast tonight on the video eating nitroglycerin pills, just anticipating what was going to go on. But I've held my temper down. I've left some things out that probably needed to be said, but I don't want to hang myself either, because there's more to it than what I've told you. And we're just going to leave it at that right now. And then if we need to, we'll start throwing some boulders instead of rocks. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day. So folks, there you have it. Slow walking, creating obstacles for people. Until the DOT got involved with these private bridges, all you needed was a driveway permit. Now you got to have floodplain permitting. Now you got to have engineering for these things. Now you got to have all these studies. All this adds money, wasted money, to what needs to be done. And then, there's not enough money allocated. Now, the state has a rainy day fund that they could use, but they're choosing not to use it. What are you going to do? Sit on that money forever? There's billions of dollars in the rainy day fund. You either need to use it and fix these bridges, or refund the taxpayers all that money you got laying over there in Raleigh in the banks that you're not using, that you've called a rainy day fund. That ain't nothing but a place for people that greedy, hungry, and stuff like that get their hands on some way or another through backdoor deals and donors and stuff like that, kickbacks, paying out stuff that's not needed, pork barrel spending. Well, you need to pork barrel spend these bridges. Folks, also I'm going to tie on to the end of this video. Down in the description, you can see the video from Appalachian Navy talking to Tim Buchanan with his new bridge. The following pictures are the bridge of the rail cars, the pictures of rail car bridges that Innovative Bridges have put in that are very inexpensive and very quick to do and will last for years and years and years to come. And you can see how weight supportive they are with the excavators sitting on them. So there you go, folks. Have a blessed day. Watch for the pictures coming up, and then be sure to check out the Appalachian Navy channel. In the description is the link. Have a blessed day.